PinoyRadio.com, Sunday Supercharged Tired of the week's work, you're home alone to relax, or you're with your family to the max. Drinking coffee, decaf or strong, on the watch of the news and updates, on the weather forecast. You are safe listening to us. Here's a heart as ever, and he will deal with the fever. Brian Pepper, Brian Pepper, Brian Pepper, on PinoyRadio.com, Sunday Supercharged Weekend. Brian Pepper, Brian Pepper, oh, Brian Pepper, on PinoyRadio.com, Sunday Supercharged Weekend. Tired of the week's work, you're home alone to relax, or you're with your family to the max. Drinking coffee, decaf or strong, on the watch of the news and updates, on the weather forecast. You are safe listening to us. Here's a heart as ever, and he will deal with the fever. Right, Papa? Archie.
What's the purpose of your visit? Do you intend to stay long?
Questions. A lot of questions.
So, what's your concern? Do you have issues on student visa or super visa?
I want to know about family sponsorship.
Business immigration?
How about caregiver program?
Self-employed class?
Tell me more on PR and citizenship applications.
Skilled and temporary workers?
Please enlighten me on express entry. NQCIS has the answers. Northern Quest, Canadian Immigration Services.
Visit their website today, northernquest.ca, or better call them now at 647-302-3508.
NQCIS, your reliable partner to your bright future in Canada. We would like to express that the opinions, views, comments, and suggestions of the host in this program are purely their own and do not reflect those of Pinoy Radio. Emanating from MCBN Broadcast Center, your all-Filipino radio, PinoyRadio.com. PinoyRadio.com. This year, we'll never get short of surprises. In fact, we step up the game. Hashtag Level Up Goals. The finest hits, outstanding shows, remarkable events. Media Cancer Broadcasting Network Incorporated. This is PinoyRadio.com. Love it. Caregivers, unite. Your show is here. ATC. Ito tayong mga caregivers. Caregivers na nasa ibang parte ng ating mundo o nasa Canada mismo. Sama ka na sa palatuntunang tutugon sa iyong mga hinaing. Sasagot sa mga isyong bumabagabag sa inyong damdamin. Pag-uusapan ang mga temang napapanahon at mga hamon sa buhay ng mga caregivers ng kasalukuyang panahon. ATC, kasama ang inyong ating Ate V para samahan, alalayan at tulungan kayo sa mga usaping labor o legal, immigration o reunification, services o settlement. Lahat ng yan sa ETC program nating mga caregivers. ETC, eto tayong mga caregivers with Ate V and friends. Kasama ang iba't ibang mga organisasyon na ating katuwang. Kaya't mga kabayan, kaibigan, narito na ang inyong ka-ETC, Vilma Ate V Pagaduan. Kinig na ngayon na.
Ayan, magandang hapon po sa ating mga makikinig dito sa PinoyRadio.com, dito sa ETC. Siyempre, kasama ko si Kuya Jay.
Siyempre naman, Ate V, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. At nandito po kami ulit para sa ating magandang pag-uusap-usap.
Sigurado ka maganda.
Malamang.
Wala ka dito last week, di mo alam ano nangyari.
I know, na-miss ko nga. Pero nakita ko naman sa Facebook, Ate V. At hindi natuloy yung guest nyo.
Ay, nako. Nosebleed ang nangyari. Biro mo 1 week, siya ang nag-ano nun, siya ang nagbigay ng date, ng time. Last minute, I cannot make it, my honey dear.
Sabi nga nila TV it happens.
Kasi pinagdasal mo sa Montreal. Kaya ganun.
Ayun, nandun po kasi sa Montreal last weekend dahil meron po pinuntahang family friend and nag-celebrate ng 50th birthday. But anyway, matutuloy pa rin po yan pagdating ng isang araw.
Meron na actually.
Ayun,
pero ayoko
pala.
na, nadala na ako.
Ganun ba?
Hindi ko na ipagsasabi kahit sa
Okay,
iyo.
kailang sigurado na para walang...
Ay nako, nakatikom na ang bibig ko.
Abangan nyo po yan.
Ang update nga pala dun sa kasi last week nagkaroon kami ng last Thursday.
Yan, nabalitaan ko yan.
Nagkaroon kami ng town hall meeting with the minister. At medyo hindi maganda yung aking ine-expect. Pero I'm so hopeful na at least may gagawin sila. At this coming week sa Wednesday, meron kaming pagpupulong-pulong sa University of Toronto at kasama ako, naimbitahan ako para pag-aralan yung mga problema ng immigration.
Ate B, baka di nila alam kung sino tinutukoy mong minister. Actually, si Minister Ahmed Hussein po, yung ating immigration minister ang tinutukoy ni Ate B.
Yeah, IRCC. May nag-post Prime Minister IRCC. So sabi ko, nag-iisa lang po ang ating Prime Minister. Ako ay Prime Ribs lang.
Yun.
So, na-miss nila yung joke natin last week kasi wala ka Alam nga namang kausapin ko sarili ko sa...
Mismo.
So ngayon, walang sumulat tungkol
kaya
sa ating prom day.
Magpadala po kayo ng mga jokes ng sa ganun. Meron kami mai-share sa simula ng ating show.
Yeah, pero may nagpadala. Sabi niya, Ate B, di ba pag mga OFW, pag sa labas ng bansa ng Pilipinas, minsan talaga sabik na sabik tayo maghanap ng mga Pilipino.
Aha.
Pag merong mga orientation, syempre nagsusulat sila, tinatawag isa-isa yung pangalan.
Mm-hmm.
Pag nakarinig ka ng pangalan o apelidong Tagalog na sasabi ka. Pero ang gusto niya, magbigay daw tayo ng example.
Saka minsan, Ate B, kung narinig mo yung mga pangalan nila, hindi ka sigurado kung Pinoy kaya to o ano, kaya mag-alala ka. Kasi
yung mga
pangalan,
Santa Cruz,
malalim.
Medyo parang Spanish.
I know.
No? Pero kung Tagalog na rinig mo, ako nung nakarinig ako ng Tagalog na pangalan, apelido, tinakbo ko Talaga nakipagkamay ako, taray. Lalo ako umiyak.
At saka minsan nakatuwa pa, malalalim mga pangalan nila sa Tagalog, kumbaga, and malalaman mo na lang, dito pala pinanganak, pero yung pangalan nila is napakalalim na Pilipino.
Hindi pinalitan.
Hindi pinalitan.
Pero may mga pangalan na ipinadala sa amin na hindi po namin masasabi on air dahil medyo, hindi naman sa medyo pero delikado. Alam nyo naman, nasa Canada tayo. Sa Pilipinas, pwede nating gawin yun, sabihin. Pero dito, okay, yung isang pangalan, meron ka ba sa isip?
Dimalanta.
Ang English niyan is dry leaves.
Yeah, pasintabi po, nababanggit lang po namin itong mga pangalan
kasi
to, pero
padala po sa amin ito.
Ito ay hindi sa panlalait, kumbaga. Ito ay talagang mga totoong mga apelyidong Pilipino. Pinoy na Pinoy talaga ang dating.
Ako meron, pangalan na may apelyido pa. Kasi
ano
ito, best friend ko nung high school. Kakakasal niya lang dito sa sa
Canada?
Nasa Detroit yata siya.
Michigan.
So, babatiin ko na rin si Luningning Balasote. Yan, classmate ko sa Villamor sa Pasig Line.
Luningning na Balasote pa.
Yeah, Tagalog na Tagalog, di ba?
Galing. Kaano kaya, may kamag-anak ka siyang may kamag-anak kaya siyang bayani? Kasi parang tunog bayani yung kanyang
bayani naman tayo pag nasa labas ng bansa. Wala nga lang tayong
yun naman.
armas.
Yun naman.
Kundi remittance.
Yeah. Meron din ako alam na family name pa, TV. Ito based sa pangalan ng Laguna, Lagos Nilad.
Yeah.
Diba?
Yan pag talagang in English mo Manila yata yan
Manila?
Yung Tagos.
Pero alam ko may Lagos Nilad sa Maynila
Oo, kasi sila yung may-ari niya.
Yung pala yung Lagos Nilad.
Mga kilalang yan sa lipunan.
Okay.
Yung yung Lagusan ng Manila at saka eto pa, bayani talaga.
Ano?
Dimasalang.
Dimasalang.
Dimasalang ba?
Yun,
ang
hindi
English
Dimasalang.
niyan, touch me not.
Naman.
Ang galing,
Dimasalang. Tama ka, Dimasalang.
Kasi nasa nasa No Limit Tangere.
Ito. Pangalan din ng lugar. Orbis Tondo.
Matatapang mga tao dyan.
Lagot ka
mga
dito.
tao. Hindi atakbo.
Baka mabalisong ka.
Exactly.
Di naman. In fairness sa Tondo po, mas matahimik na raw doon ngayon kumpara dati.
Kasi wala na sila lahat.
nandito na sa Toronto.
Meron pa. Ano ba yan?
Yeah. Silang.
Sa Cavite.
Yeah, Silang. Pero hindi ko alam kung Silang ba to o Silang.
stupid.
I think Silang, no?
Silang?
Silang. Na family name.
Ito, yung kaibigan ko, best friend ko. Siya yung nag-provide sa akin ng aking medical expenses. Kasi, syempre, hindi ko afford no? Broke na broke. So, itong pamilyang ito ang nag-provide ng aking medical expenses papuntang Cyprus. Tapos, lumipat nga ako ng Canada. Di maano.
Oh,
yan,
Di
si
Maano.
Nenet. Hi, Nenet. Di maano. Mataas na ang posisyon niya ngayon sa gobyerno sa Pilipinas.
Nice. Hi,
so,
Nenet.
Yan. So, yan mga Pilipino ang pangalan. Ang ating guest, Pilipino rin.
Mismo.
Pero,
ang kanyang
nosebleed.
family at ang kanyang family name ay Pilipino din pero parang based sa, galing sa Spanish na name, no? Parang pilyado natin.
O, tsaka kasangga natin to.
I know.
Kailangan natin ng lawyer in the future.
Tama. Okay, mga kaibigan, meron po tayong guest dito at siya ay isang certified specialist in civil litigation, specializing in employment law. Kabayan po natin siya at dito pinanganak. Please welcome Attorney Jeffrey Robles.
Yan, welcome po, sir.
Thank you po for having me on the show.
Oh, ang dami nanonood sa atin. Ayan, pumapalakpak po sila. Kumusta po? How are you, sir?
I'm good po. Thank
How would you like me to address you?
Oh, Jeffrey is
Jeffrey. Oh, yan ang gusto ko dito sa
Ayan
Canada.
naman, oo.
I'm Ate V po at siya po si Kuya J.
Kuya J, yan.
So, where are you from, Philippines? Your family is from what province?
My mother's side of the family is Kapampangan. So, Kapampangan from
May Kenny na, anong buliin mo?
No.
Sounds very familiar to me po.
Yeah.
My father's side of the family is from Bataan.
Bataan, Tagalog.
Opo.
Pilipinong-Pilipino.
That's right. Opo.
Yeah. So, may family na po kayo dito?
Opo.
And dito po kayo pinanganak sa Pilipinas or dito lang kayo? Ay, sa Canada?
Dito sa Canada. Opo.
Oh.
My sister and I were born here. My mother and father actually met here in Kingston, Ontario. So they didn't meet back home. They got married here in Canada. And then I have many aunts and uncles here and cousins here.
Yeah, add me in the list. I'm your auntie.
Of course, look me up on Facebook po.
Yeah, sure.
Ayan, magiging friend na natin siya.
And before anything else, I would like to thank Attorney Maria Capulong for hooking,
Yes, syempre. Attorney Kapulong, thank you po.
Yeah, she's the one who contacted Jeffrey to be on the show. And anytime na kailangan ko ng mga lawyer, kasi kailangan ko talaga kasi madakdak ako eh.
Ayan.
So, connection, network.
Thank you ulit, Attorney
Thank
Kapulong.
you, Attorney Kapulong.
Thank you,
And
Attorney
later on, pag-uusapan po natin yung ating mga batas,
Yeah.
mga law or employment standard
Yeah.
among caregivers. Kasi,
Yes, Ate V. Kaya nga nandito si Attorney Jeffrey Robles or si Jeffrey kasi nga pag-uusapan natin po ngayon ang tungkol sa labor law. At para simulan po natin ang ating talakayan sa labor law, tanungin po natin si Attorney Jeffrey, ano po ba yung tinatawag nating labor law?
what is labor law?
Well, labor law or employment, let's make a distinction between labor law and employment law. When we talk about employment law, we're really talking about the relationship between the employer and a unionized employee or an employee who is part of a collective bargaining agreement. When we talk about employment law, what we're really talking about is the employment relationship between an employer and an individual employee who is not part of a collective bargaining agreement or a union.
So why don't we focus on that, the last one that you mentioned? Medyo nag-nosebleed na ako.
Punas.
Okay.
Sure, okay po. No problem. So, when we talk about employment law, and especially in relation to the topic of this show in particular, what we're really concentrated on for the most part is employment standards and legislation that applies to caregivers.
So, employment standard, it involves the minimum wage.
Among other things po. Among other things. So, the Employment Standards Act 2000 is Ontario legislation that sets out standards, the basics or the fundamentals that an employer has to meet when it comes to how it deals with their employer or employees rather. So we're talking about things like not just the minimum wage, which currently is $11.40 per hour. We're also talking about hours of work. We're talking about public holidays. We're talking about things like vacation pay as well.
Okay. You mentioned the minimum wage. Coming this October, there was an announcement from the provincial level that in October, the minimum wage will become $15 an hour. I think 6 of the caregivers already approached me and said that they were approached and called by the employer that they are willing to abide with the increase on October, but the problem is the employers are also employed outside, meaning they are employees. So meaning they will, maybe they can afford, but they're not expecting, they cannot pay the $15 an hour for the caregivers. And they were approached that it's either you stay on the same contract, the same amount of money that we're going to pay for you, or you want to go and find an employer who can pay $15 an hour. So in that scenario, where is the right of the caregiver?
That's a very interesting question, Paul. And it's a difficult situation that now employers and employees have to struggle with. When it comes to the increase in the minimum wage, an employer, as you've described, could try to ask the employee, okay, look, I would love to keep you on as an employee, but with the increase in the minimum wage, I'm going to have some difficulty being able to pay you at $15 an hour. And we have to bear in mind, not only does the employer have to pay the minimum wage, but also has to be able to pay the tax and now the increase in the CPP and EI deductions. So that's another consideration that has to be kept in mind. However, the Employment Standards Act makes it very clear that an employer and an employee can't contract out or reach an agreement that goes below the minimum standard. So even in as much as the employer would like to say to the employee, okay, if you'll agree, we'll just keep you on at $11.40 an hour come October. Once that minimum standard is met at $15 an hour, once that's actually passed and legislated and enforced, there's no getting out of that $15
So
an
they
hour.
really have to follow the law.
That's right. If they reached an agreement and despite what the legislation says, they continue to pay at $11.40 an hour, if there's ever any dispute as between the employer and the employee could simply contact the Ministry of Labor, the Employment Standards Branch, and then say, hey, look, I was only paid at $11.40 from October onward.
Yeah, but okay, Jerome?
Yeah, actually, Ate V, he covered a lot. Attorney Jeffrey, he covered a lot.
Of issues, ano?
Yeah, nandun na yung tungkol sa rights ng caregivers na mga nagtatrabaho at kung halimbawa maapektuhan nga sila ng mga sweldo pagbabago ng minimum wage na cover up na rin niya. Maganda rin yung sinasabi niya ngayon na kung sakasakali dumating yung punto na hindi nga napagbigyan o hindi nasunod yung minimum na $15, may nabagit si Jeffrey dito na pwede silang kumontak sa labor office.
But the thing is, ako kasi I'm very hands-on with the caregiver, so I know the ins and outs and how they can manipulate all these vulnerable people, you know. Most caregivers, they always agree with what the employer will say. Not all the time, but there are in most cases, the caregivers will agree. Okay, we will put in the contract that $15 an hour, but you're gonna receive this, and then part of this is this one. So because they're scared of the immigration status, because they're afraid of losing a status or maybe lose the job. And once you lose the job and you cannot complete the 24 months program, then you will have a problem in the future. So in most cases, caregivers will always say, yes, let's do this because I want my papers, to finish the program.
Opo.
Dinugo ako doon na TV.
But I also have experiences with caregivers. Every time they come and they complain, my always answer is, call the ministry or I will provide you a lawyer, how far would you go? If their answer is like a so-so, I don't, encourage them to go and file a case, because I experienced it myself that in the middle of the case, the caregiver or the Filipino or the complainant always, in the middle of the case, they always go and leave you hanging. Yeah.
Abandon, yeah.
So always, because these Filipinos or caregivers are the vulnerable people, so employers are taking advantage. But what can you give advice to the caregivers who are in this situation right now?
Well, let me say first and foremost that I have tremendous respect for caregivers
Thank
here
you.
in Canada, because I
Thank
know
you.
I've seen the kind of sacrifice that they make in order for them to be able to open those windows of opportunity for their family to have potentially a better life. For living caregivers, really their ultimate goal is to complete those 24 months in order to be able to get their open work permit, right? That's the ultimate goal for many of these living caregivers, aside from, of course, getting enough money to send back home to send to the family. The difficulty that many living caregivers in Canada have is something that goes to the very heart or the root of the employment relationship, which is fundamentally governed by the law of contract. And what I'm talking about here is something called inequality of bargaining power. That's really what we're talking about here. The employer, for the most part, holds all the cards, because they're here, they're the one with the pay, they're the one who's already living here and established.
Yep.
It's the caregiver who's oftentimes the only member of her family who's here in Canada, has had to come from another country to be here, and really has very little options available. So we're talking about whether or not the agreement that has been reached between the parties, the employer and the employee, is it really enforceable because of that, bearing in mind that inequality of bargaining power.
Yeah, this is really a very interesting topic, TV and Jeffrey. You have mentioned a lot about what's happening in employment standards and everything. But in a nutshell, could you just give us again the rights of the caregiver?
Sure. Well, when we're talking about caregiver rights, obviously you have the right to be paid for every hour that you have worked currently at the rate of $11.40 per hour, to have the right to ensure that your employer is making the necessary statutory deductions on your behalf and then remitting them to the receiver general. You have minimum rights as they relate to public holidays. For example, we have in Ontario 9 public holidays. It used to be 8. After we had the addition of Family Day in February, that brought us up to 9. You have the right to certain hours of work. You can work up to 48 hours in a week. After 44 hours, you're entitled to overtime pay.
But most caregivers, they don't get that pay, overtime pay.
Yeah. And actually, I have a follow-up question about that. And these were asked to me by some caregivers. In cases of holidays, is it rightful to have the client if it's a holiday and the caregiver did not work, will the caregiver has the right to be paid still on stat, like statutory pay, something like that?
The when it comes to the public holidays, they're entitled to have that time off, not have to work. If they are, if they reach an agreement that the caregiver does work on the statutory holiday, there is going to be holiday pay or a premium that is paid at the.
Can we call it double pay?
We can call it based on what the Employment Standards Act says.
Yeah, that's what the double pay. Tama nga.
That's right.
Yeah, the other thing is if the employers are going on vacation or like a holiday and the caregiver is left alone at the house, for example, what should be the right thing that should happen? Like, will the caregiver be paid while their employers are away, or
That's a good question. It really comes down to what the employer and the employee agree upon regarding time off. If the employer decides to go away on vacation, sometimes we see the employer say to the caregiver, come with us on vacation. In that case, the caregiver is still working and so is entitled to be paid. If the employer goes on vacation and
She's left behind.
She's left behind. It depends on what the employer says to the employee, or what agreement is reached. The employer and the employee could say, okay, we're going on vacation. You can go on vacation during this time as well. We're going to give you part of your 14 days that you are entitled to under employment
Okay,
standards.
I have a follow-up question regarding because caregivers, they have 2 weeks vacation every year.
That's
10%.
right.
So, yeah.
4%, sorry.
Yeah. So, there's so many cases like this. The employer will go outside for a vacation, and there is an agreement that the caregiver will use the 2 weeks vacation later on. So meaning, whether they leave her alone while they're having the vacation outside the Canada, the employer came back and said, okay, you don't have any more 2 weeks vacation for next year, for this year, because we're on vacation and we cannot afford to pay you. So that's already your vacation. So that is a violation of her right. And what the caregiver can do in terms of,
This thing happens.
yeah.
Well, what the caregiver can do in a situation like that, Paul, is first of all, you have the option of making a complaint to the Ministry of Labor. But here's the problem. Here's the downside risk. If the caregiver does that, he or she runs the risk that she's burning bridges essentially with her employer. She's
For sure.
souring the relationship with the employer. As a matter of practice or some practical advice is, in a situation like that, if there is an agreement in advance between the caregiver and the employer, let's get it in writing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get it by way of a contract. It might be on the weekend when the caregiver is off at work. Send an email to
Or text.
or a text message that can easily provide a written
What if
record
it's
of what was
already
agreed upon.
the agreement is a verbal agreement only? Is it applicable also?
It's still applicable. A verbal agreement or an oral agreement is enforceable in Ontario, but the difficulty is how do you prove it?
That's
Her
right.
word against.
That's right. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. So
And that's why I bring it back to what I said earlier. As a matter of practice, it would be a good idea to get those kind of agreements in writing.
Very important. Contract is very important. We have a reference for that.
Okay.
Text message, email, something simple where it says, based on what I understand,
Yeah.
we're going to go away on vacation.
That should be documented.
And
Or-
during that time,
do you think diary is also one way of documenting anything that is happening inside the house?
oh, well, that's a good thing to have. A diary forms a contemporaneous record of what has transpired. It has some value. It's not what I would consider to be the best evidence, but it can be considered.
Because when I was a
reasonable
nanny, I
evidence.
have a diary.
Likewise, I
Even
have
the
my diary too.
exclamation point, the expression is there. So when things, didn't work well, so
Yeah.
I brought the diary to the Service Canada. So I got
And my calendar. My calendar is
Yeah, you
full
have-
of
you have to keep all those because
graffitis there. Yeah.
along the way you will need it. I'm not saying that you're gonna need it now, but along the way you will be one day.
The utility of having a diary or a calendar as a contemporaneous record of what has happened in the past is that if it comes down to a he said, she said, it helps your credibility versus the employer's
Absolutely.
credibility.
Yes.
Because now you can say, well, what makes you so sure of it, that what you're telling me is actually correct? Oh, well, just as you mentioned it, I happen to have here my diary of what I wrote down on that day that it happened.
Yes.
So there's the
Yeah.
utility po.
Okay, napakaganda po ng ating discussion dito. It's very interesting, but we need to have a break. So,
Magbabalik po kami.
magbabalik po kami.
Kinig na! This is your Caregivers Hour on PinoyRadio.com. ETC. Ito tayong mga caregivers. ETC. Tutok
Ang
na.
Rouge Valley Mitsubishi ay masayang magdiriwang ng ika-100 taong anibersaryo. 0% lease or finance hanggang 84 months sa mga piling modelo. Di mo kailangang magbayad sa unang 2 buwan. Mabilis na credit approval. Bumisita sa RougeValleyMitsubishi.ca ngayon.
What's the purpose of your visit? Do you intend to stay long?
Questions. A lot of questions.
So, what's your concern? Do you have issues on student visa or super visa?
I want to know about family sponsorship.
Business immigration?
How about caregiver programs?
Self-employed class?
Tell me more on PR and citizenship applications.
Skilled and temporary workers?
Please enlighten me on express entry. NQCIS has the answers. Northern Quest, Canadian Immigration Services.
Visit their website today, northernquest.ca, or better call them now at 647-302-3508.
NQCIS, your reliable partner to your bright future in Canada. After the journey, the hard work, comes the much anticipated day. The time has come. The search is on for the significant contributions of Filipino Canadians to the community and the country. The first Golden Balangay Awards. Launching date, March 11. Nomination period, March 12 to August 11, 2017. For more information, contact Ronnie Dilagana at 647-300-1970 or send your email at ronnie.dilagana@ikubumedia.com. Libo-libong kwento ng paglalakbay, isang gabing pagdiriwang ng tagumpay. For the outstanding Filipino Canadians, this is for you.
Kick off my shoes, turn Pinoy radio on. Few moments later and my favorite song comes on. I'm feeling happy, dance to the beat. Filipino music makes me feel free. The music touches my soul, makes me feel high. I'm loving life, proud to be Pinay. There's no other place that makes me feel home than tuning into PinoyRadio.com. This is the music of my life, fills me with love and so much pride. PinoyRadio.com, just log in, it's always on. PinoyRadio.com, just log on, it's always on. PinoyRadio.com.
Ayan, at
Kinig
nagbabalik
na.
po kami.
This is your Caregivers Hour on PinoyRadio.com. ETC. Ito tayong mga caregivers. ETC. Tutok na.
Ayan, at nagbabalik po kami. Meron po kaming message sa Facebook, ano? Fred, may message ka sa akin sa inbox. Pakitawagan si SL. SL 647-296-0154. Fred, pakitawagan si SL para sa case mo, and all services that we're going to give you are free. Free po yan. So, nandito pa rin po si Mr. Jeffrey Robles, ang ating pong lawyer. Pinag-usapan po natin ang rights ng mga caregivers according sa standard, employment standard. So, Jerome? Jejo!
Kuya, wala na sa TV. Anyway, yes, going back to Attorney Jeffrey here, to continue our discussion about the labor and the employment standard, we have this question too being asked by many caregivers concerning about termination, and in cases wherein there is a wrongful termination, or what is the so-called wrongful termination? How does it happen?
And what are the wrongful terminations?
Okay, so that's a very good question, Paul. Going back to something I said earlier, every employment contract or every employment relationship is governed by the law of contract. So even if it is just a verbal contract, a verbal agreement, it's still an enforceable contract nonetheless. However, with the case of caregivers, Paul, especially the listeners of this program, there's almost certainly a written contract because it's needed in order for the caregiver to be able to come over here. When we talk about a wrongful termination or a wrongful dismissal, what we're talking about is the employer breaching the employment contract and failing to pay the caregiver something called notice, either notice of termination or pay in lieu of notice of termination. And so there are two ways to look at notice, or this concept of notice, and notice being an amount of time or pay in lieu of time to help that employer, or employee rather, get to not just any job but comparable employment. So in Canada, in Ontario in particular, we have two ways to look at it. One is, of course, as we've been talking about, as set out in the Employment Standards Act 2000. So we're talking about, in terms of notice of termination, 1 week per year of service of notice of termination. However, over and above what the Employment Standards Act prescribes is something called or referred to as reasonable notice at common law or case law.
Can I cut you for a while? When is it a wrongful termination for the employer to say, okay, you're pregnant, and I don't think I'm going to need you because later on you're going to have this, motion sickness, sickness, morning sickness, and I cannot afford to have somebody, Is that a wrongful termination?
Absolutely, po. Opo. Not only is it a wrongful termination because there really is no cause to dismiss the employee or terminate the employee. On top of that, it's also a case of discrimination under the Ontario Human Rights Code. Discrimination on the basis of family status in particular.
Because I have at least 3 caregivers who came and
they were terminated.
They were terminated
because of their pregnant.
Not verbally said that because you're pregnant, but they make it, they have some kind of
indirectly.
But the caregiver said that as soon as she told the employer that she's pregnant, the employer after a few days said that I don't think we're gonna need you, and blah blah blah.
So it's a wrongful termination.
Oh, well, that's right. And so in a situation like that, the caregiver is not without recourse or remedy. So not only could the caregiver make a complaint to the Ministry of Labor, but also the caregiver could contact the Ontario Human Rights Commission because of that discrimination on the basis of family status.
Do they have to pay the representative or a lawyer
to do that?
Not necessarily, but when it comes to this particular fact situation that we're talking about right now, the caregiver who became pregnant and notified her employer, she doesn't necessarily need to retain counsel to contact the Ministry of Labor or to contact and file an application against the employer under the Ontario Human Rights Code. And the nice thing, the benefit to the caregiver is, essentially, there's no downside risk to the caregiver to apply.
Interesting,
because even if the application is not successful, she's already been let go anyway. What else can the employer do? The employer wouldn't be entitled to his or her legal fees for being successful in defending the application. So as I said, no downside risk to the caregiver in applying to the Ontario Human Rights Commission.
Okay, when it comes to the medical and
Ate Vid, ito nga tungkol sa ibang nirereklamo nga ng mga ibang caregivers, especially those caregivers without this, what they call WSIV. How could they get hospital and medical insurance if, with regards to WSIB?
Can they demand the employer?
When it comes to WSIB, it's not an area that I'm particularly well versed in. Usually, the employer has to fall under one of two kinds of schedules set out in the legislation, a Schedule 1 or a Schedule 2 employer. As far as employers who are employers of living caregivers, I'm not sure whether they fall under one of those two categories, but there may be a way to contract into WSIB. WSIB really is for the benefit of employees who have become injured while on the job. So say, for example, the children have left toys out and the caregiver didn't see it and slipped and fell in the home.
Like me, we were playing, I was playing with my kids, my employer's kids, hockey, and then I was hit, and then, I paid for my dental expenses.
And here's another thing a remedy that might be available to caregivers who are injured while they're at their employer's home is they might be able to file a claim against the employer's home insurance.
Wow,
home
that's
insurance.
good. Home insurance.
Tama, di mo naisip yung TV
Ay, hindi ko naman alam eh. Wala pa akong kilala nun eh.
You didn't know me at that point.
Yeah,
though, so.
now I know. Now, naku. Ayan, marami pala kayong makukuha dito. Now, attorney, you know that the caregivers, the salary, the wages is very minimal and they cannot afford. Even if they have a strong case, they cannot afford the rate of the representative or a private lawyer. So what's the remedy for that? Can you afford to give us volunteer hours?
Or are there any offices or institutions that the caregivers could approach in cases they needed some legal help or representation?
That's a good question, po. And I am definitely sympathetic to the cost of legal services, the cost of legal fees, and the fact that with the kind of income that caregivers generally receive, they can't afford a protracted or lengthy legal battle with their employer. So what recourse is there for caregivers who need to have legal representation? Well, one is, of course, to seek out lawyers who are taking on cases on a pro bono basis.
Yes.
Those tend to be few and far between. However, if they were to contact Pro Bono Ontario, if I'm not mistaken, an office through the Law Society of Upper Canada, the governing body for lawyers, they may be able to contact a lawyer who may be able to help them. Another avenue that they can pursue is to contact the community legal aid services or the student-run legal aid clinics with the law schools in Ontario. So Osgoode Hall Law School has a student-run legal clinic. University of Toronto is another option if they're in Ottawa.
And
University of Ottawa.
maybe our friend here.
Jeffrey Robles.
So, where is your office? Because I know a lot of caregivers, or not only caregivers, but different Filipino communities who needs a lawyer.
Yeah.
Maybe you can give us your office address,
Ate
number.
B, meron ako niyan. Okay, actually, you could approach or you could contact Attorney Jeffrey Robles. Is basically located in Ajax. Their office is actually with Rayleigh and Partners. Rayleigh and Partners at 555 555 Kingston Road West, second floor in Pickering Village, Ajax, Ontario.
And phone number?
Their phone number is 905-427-4077, extension 29. Again, it's 905-427-4077. Attorney Jeffrey Robles of Rayleigh and Partners.
Ayan. So, we'd like to thank you for coming, and I hope that our viewers were able to get a lot of information. No? And
kahit nose bleeding pa, no?
Nakaka-nosebleed talaga. Pero maganda.
Marami, napakaraming mga information na nakuha natin kay Attorney
Jeffrey. So, any parting words, Jeffrey?
Yep, please.
Salamat po for having me on the show. I really appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you and to share information with our Pinay caregivers here in Canada. As I said, I have tremendous respect for the work that you do and the sacrifice that you make for your families in order to seek out a better life. So,
attorney, just in case we need your help, even on the phone, can we call you? And then, because a lot of caregivers are asking a lot of questions, I'm not really knowledgeable about it.
Can we make a quick call just for consultation over the phone?
You have my contact information.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, and thank you.
Maraming salamat.
And I hope
salamat.
this is not the last. Okay, meron po tayong ang ating segment na Sak Lolo Attorney. So meron po tayong caller. Medyo hindi naman siya sa labor aspect, pero may tumawag. Nandito po si Attorney Ancheta. Attorney Ancheta.
Hello, Vilma. Sorry, medyo pause ako ngayon.
Okay lang.
Nagkaraoke sa Attorney Bill.
Mas gusto ko yung boses mo. Okay, attorney, may tanong po. Ang sabi ng caregiver, in-response kasi dalawa yung anak niya. Yung isa, kasama pa doon yung age niya doon sa sponsorship. Okay,
Choppy,
sa permanent...
can't hear you.
Okay.
Hindi kita marinig.
Kasama pa yung una niyang anak ay hindi nakasama sa application ng permanent residency. Yung pangalawa, yun ang kasama. So, yun ang hinihintay namin dumating. Ngayon, inisponsoran niya yung panganay under the International Student Program.
Okay.
Nag-enroll ngayon yung anak niya sa isang private college dito sa downtown Toronto. Last week, tinawag sila ng admin at sinabing, we will not issue any more work permit dahil di ba binago na ng immigration ang mga patakaran, ang mga palusiya. Ngayon, ano daw ang dapat niyang gawin? Dahil nakapagbayad na sila, kailangan bang mag-transfer ang bata ng ibang school? Ano daw ba ang dapat gawin?
Yeah. Okay, so let me just ask a few questions. Itong estudyante is on the secondary school or primary school?
Ay, hindi ko na itanong.
Yeah, okay. So, kung secondary siya student, okay, so magkakaiba ang requirements ng pag-apply ng study permit, no? If you're applying as a primary student, a secondary student, and post-secondary student. Okay, so if you are asking about transferring from a secondary school.
Ay, actually, hindi pa yata siya secondary kasi kararating lang eh.
Yeah. Okay, so ang application ng isang student permit, okay? For example, nandito siya. And then the child or the parent would like to have a study permit for secondary education. Kailangan niya mag-apply ng application to change conditions as a student within Canada. So in other words, ang tatlong klase ang isang pag-apply within Canada. It's either you're a primary student, you're a secondary student, and post-secondary student. Kung primary at secondary student ka, kailangan mo mag-apply ng application for a change of condition as student in Canada. Vegreville, Alberta ang pasok niyan. Kung naman na-enroll ka sa post-secondary institution, ibig sabihin, ang hawak mo na student permit is ang nakalagay doon is designated learning institution na isang post-secondary education after high school. All you need to do is to change the name of the school by going online. So, ibig sabihin, kunyari nasa University of Toronto, kalilipat ka sa York University, hindi ka na mag-a-apply ng change sa Vegreville, Alberta.
Ito
just go online and make the changes.
Okay, attorney, example lang natin ito. Halimbawa, private ito, college. Halimbawa, Vilma Pagaduan College School. Ngayon, binago na yung polisiya. Okay, Vilma, hindi ka na makakapag-issue ng work permit. Sinabi ko ngayon dito sa estudyante, kailangan niya mag-post-secondary later. So, saan siya lilipat?
Yeah, okay. So, in situations like that, you have to file an application for extension and change the conditions as a student.
Okay.
So, hindi siya changing online lang. Okay? Hindi siya changing your designated learning institution online. So, you have to apply for a change of the condition as a student.
In Canada already?
In Canada, yes.
And then?
So doon nababago. So, bali pa, parang binabago mo ang conditions ng kanyang pag-aaral. Kasi ang pagkakaiba kasi ng pag nasa post-secondary ka na, kunyari, nag-change ka lang ng program, nag-change ka lang ng course, nag-change ka lang ng school, pero post-secondary na ang eskwelahan mo, i-change mo lang online. Kasi by coding lang yan eh. I-change mo lang online, as a online account mo ang pag-a-apply mo, bali babaguhin ng CIC and IRCC sa database lang nila. Pero kapag ka primary, secondary, or private or post-secondary, kailangan mo mga bago. You have to submit an application to change conditions of your study permit. So talagang magsasabit ka ng complete application either online or paper.
So kailangan pa ba niyang ng representative to do that or he can do it
well, kung medyo tech savvy at marunong naman magbasa at umintindi via website ang mga magulang, it's so easy because pagpasok mo naman ng post-secondary institution, right? Kunwari, private college siya, gusto mong kumuha ng post-secondary education. Ngayon, ang interest mo is really to study in an institution where you can get a postgraduate work permit or everything, lahat ng kaakibat ng isang study permit, titignan mo lang designated learning institution. Kasi ang DLI naman, listahan yan ng mga
eskwela,
secondary institution. Kung ang intention is to go for a post-secondary education. So, ang kaibahan lang, just like what I have been telling everyone, kahit sa video ko, hindi lahat ng DLI makakuha ka ng postgraduate work permit. Pero if the intention is just to study a post-secondary education, you can go by the DLI. So, ibig sabihin, kung yung private school mo na yun, hindi na siya pwede dahil hindi siya allowed. So, kailangan humanap siya ng eskwelahan na magbibigay sa kanya ng kurso. So, ibig sabihin, due diligence pa rin. So, ako, ang may papayo ko sa mga magulang, kapag ganyan ang sitwasyon, hindi ka agad naniniwala sa isang admission school. So, dapat medyo nagkakanda kayo ng sarili niyong research. Kasi, of course, all institutions are competing each other, no, pagkakuha ng estudyante. So, you have to be doing your due diligence as for asking the right questions to the right individuals. Kung ito ba ay tamang eskwelahan at iba yung punteriya ng inyong yung estudyante para makakuha kayo ng student permit. At eventually, you know, ang bata kasi kapag nandito na siya, kunyari, no, you're talking about a caregiver na hindi niya isinama ang kanyang anak na ito that is probably of age. So the intention is to make him or her a permanent resident in Canada. So at the end of the day, your objective is to switch this person to become a permanent resident kasi siya nga ang naiwan sa dependence ng application. So he is not coming here only because he wants to become a student. He was left behind. So ang intention is to switch to become a permanent resident at a later time. So lahat yan dapat i-ano yan. Kung ako, if you hire me as a lawyer, once the file is in, I will have to create a strategy from the beginning up to the end. So that's what we do. Lawyers do like that. Like, you know, when a client comes in, so kung ano yung kailangan mo, ano yan, para bang gagawan ka namin ng pattern. So, ibig sabihin, ipo-profile ka na namin. I profile my clients. For example, pagpasok na isang bata, ipo-profile ko yan hanggang pagkakuha ng permanent residency because that's what we are supposed to do.
Kung ipo-profile mo ako, attorney, ano sa tingin mo? Magulo yan.
Ipa-profile kita, ikaw ay magiging senador.
Ay! Naku, claim ko yan. Kaso.
Good claim mo yan. No? Yeah. So that's what's happening. So, ibig sabihin, pag mga magulang, kapag ka sila, ito kasi very common ito, Vilma, no?
Paus ka pa niyan, attorney, ha?
Yeah? Si Jerome ba kasama mo?
Yes.
Yes, attorney Ancheta, si Kuya Jay po.
So attorney, sa mga case mo na hinawakan dito sa mga ganitong kaso, ano ang success rate mo?
Ako kasi ang hinahawakan ko parate, hindi ako tumatanggap ng malabo na kaso. So I always make it a point na I have a greater chance. So hindi ako nare-refuse pag sa mga ganyan kasi hindi ako tumatanggap ng mga applications.
Kaya attorney, tayo.
Yes, attorney Ancheta. Attorney, may katanungan din po ako na galing din sa isang caregiver. Actually, itong caregiver na to, medyo malungkot ang nangyari dahil ilabot ng 5 taon ang kanyang application at yung kanyang panganay nung in-apply niya ay less than 17 years less than 15 years old. Inabot na ng 21 yung bata at ngayon pala na-process yung paper niya. So, ang advice sa kanya ng isang consultant ay wag nang isama yung bata dahil hindi raw makakapasa. Ano po ba ang dapat dito?
Alam mo, kahit ako, kaya kong sagutin yan dahil ang dami kong caregiver. Yung si Julia, nasa picture namin, nakita kami sa park. 27 at 28 yung anak. Sabi ko, wag mong tatanggalin kasi naka-lockdown yan. Under live-in caregiver program. Ang sabi ng consultant niya, tanggalin mo. Sabi ko, wag. O ngayon, di nandito lahat sila.
So, sa case nun, Attorney Ancheta, na itong bata, tinanggal nga sa application niya at yung pangalawa at pangatlong anak na lang yung dinisinama niya, ano ang pwede pa niyang gawin sa kanyang panganay na anak na nag-23 years old na ngayon?
Okay, so PR na ba yung caregiver? Nandito na.
Actually, kakukuha lang ng PR nung mother at nung dalawang batang, yung pangalawa at saka pangatlo. Yung panganay, na pag tinanggal na kasi ngayon ang advice ng kanyang consultant daw.
Pero tapos na yung papel.
Tapos na, oo.
So, it's too late. It's too late kasi dapat niyan.
Bago.
At the end of, dapat talaga nun bago sila naging permanent resident before landing. Kung may mga choices kayo, you should have made your choices before the landing. That's always the case. If there's a newborn, kung may change of the circumstances, family man or age, you should inform the immigration before landing. Kapag tapos na ang landing, mahirap nang balikan niya because
Okay.
hindi naman binabalikan ng immigration yung kung anong declaration mo when they open up the file, right?
Yeah.
So
So
that's not the way it works. So kung siya is over 23 now and over 27, so yun ang nasa borderline. So para bang siya ang tinatawag na tipong hindi siya sufficiently capable of applying on his own kasi kulang ng credentials, hindi rin pwedeng ma-sponsor kasi matanda na. So,
Ay, matanda na pala yung 23.
So, 23.
Yeah.
So, in short,
lang ako.
attorney, so in short, yung kaso niya ay alanganin.
Marami pa naman programa Attorney.
He has to come on his own.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
he has to come on his own.
Alam mo, kung... Okay. Attorney, kung sila medyo resourceful, maraming way kasi maraming programang available.
Yeah.
Kailangan nga lang mag-submit kayo ng detailed resume kay attorney para mapag-aralan
Yun
niya
na,
kung siya ba
Attorney
ay
Ancheta.
papasok bilang common law. Malay mo naman, may common law dito. Marami yan. So, attorney, saan po nila pwedeng isend ang resume, detailed resume?
Okay, so sa info@anchetalaw.com, INFO, which is very simple, no? info@anchetalaw.com. It's just my last name, Ancheta, ANCHETALAW.com.
Ayan.
So, yun lang.
Ancheta Law po, huwag niyong kalilimutan.
May 10 email agad yan kasi worldwide tayo.
I know.
Okay, so thank you po, attorney.
No problem, anytime.
Yeah.
So, yun lang ang dapat tandaan ng mga caregivers na naiwan ng mga anak nila. Huwag basta-bastang maniwala sa mga sabi-sabi.
Yeah.
So there are ways, no? So there are ways.
Tumpak ka dyan, attorney.
Yung bagong batas ngayon that will kick off on October 24 of 2017, bringing back the age of 19, no? 19 to 21. So that is also an opportunity for the caregivers who are still applying for permanent residency to bring in the family members who are over 19 or 21 kasi maraming paraan pa dyan para maisama. But of course, they need to really get some help from the professionals para maintindihan ko ang transition at ano ang stages ng mga application because it is not as easy as 1, 2, 3 when you apply in cases like that. So it has to be really studied very well.
Ayun naman.
Okay, thank you, attorney. Paus ka pa ng lagay na yan, ha?
Sa lagay na paus pa siya.
So wala na po tayong oras. Thank you po.
Magandang hapon na lang sa lahat. At saka, talk to you some other time when I get better.
Okay, attorney, thank you so much. Ingat po kayo.
Okay, bye.
Yan, at yan po ang ating attorney. Kasi
Saklo
ang
law.
ating saklo law.
Yun.
Yung mga caregiver na tinutulungan natin.
Ulit, mga kaibigan, mga tagapakinig, huwag niyo pong kalimutan magpadala ng mga jokes ninyo or mga katanungan ninyo sa amin, sa aming Facebook. At nang sa ganun ay ma-feature namin to sa aming susunod na pagbabalita ulit.
At huwag niyo kalilimutan si Attorney Jeffrey Robles po.
Of
ang kanyang
course.
opisina ay sa Ajax. Hindi ko mabasa dahil
Sa Rayleigh and Partners, 555 Kingston Road West, 2nd floor, Pickering Village, Ajax, Ontario.
At kung may mga tanong kayo, i-post nyo sa Facebook kasi i-forward natin yan. Kung sa labor law o sa employment standards, i-forward natin kay Attorney Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Kung sa mga injury, i-forward natin kay Attorney Kapulong. Kung immigration, i-forward natin kay Attorney Dina Santos, Attorney Ancheta.
Yan, ang
napapalibutan
dami.
tayo ng lawyer.
Kaya wag po kayo magatubili. Kung may mga tanungan kayo, may mga suliranin, kontakin niyo po kami kaagad.
Yan, i-post niyo po sa Facebook. At
libre
meron
yan.
na tayong, malapit na tayo sa 10,000 members.
Yun naman.
At yung mga kailangan ng mga libre, lahat ng libreng services, free settlement services,
including medical,
dental, medical, if you're an international student, you don't have a doctor, dental, free dental, lahat po yan, may ipoprovide po yan. Just call SL 647-296-0154. At yung nag-message sa akin ngayon,
si Fred.
Si Fred. Fred Panopio kaya yun. Hindi, ayokong banggitin ng buong pangalan niya, Tawagan mo po si SL 647-296-0154 at lahat ng serbisyong ibibigay namin sa iyo ay libre.
At pwede rin po makita si SL sa Our Lady of Assumption sa Caregivers Action Center tuwing linggo ng hapon.
Yan. At yan po ang ating episode sa hapon na ito. Ito po si
Kuya J at ito naman po si
Ate V ng Bayan. At kayo po ay nakikinig dito sa PinoyRadio.com. Maraming salamat po. Ito po si Ate V ng ETC. Magkita-kita po tayo next week, Sunday, dito po sa PinoyRadio.com.
Isa na namang siksik na hapon sa palatuntunan para sa ating mga ka-ETC. Caregivers Hour sa PinoyRadio.com.
Maraming paksa na sanga-sanga na napapaloob sa caregivers.
Ito tayong mga caregivers. ETC. Sari-saring tema, halo-halong usapin, tutugon sa mga issue, sasagot sa mga tanong.
Kayo po ay nakikinig sa Pinoy Radio at napapanood nyo rin po kami sa live streaming dito sa Facebook at MCBN TV.
Hanggang sa susunod, ganap na alas 2 hanggang alas 3 ng hapon. ETC on PinoyRadio.com.
What's the purpose of your visit? Do you intend to stay long?
Questions. A lot of questions.
So, what's your concern? Do you have issues on student visa or super visa?
I want to know about family sponsorship.
Business immigration?
How about caregiver program?
Self-employed class?
Tell me more on PR and citizenship applications.
Skilled and temporary workers?
Please enlighten me on express entry. NQCIS has the answers. Northern Quest, Canadian Immigration Services.
Visit their website today, northernquest.ca, or better call them now at 647-302-3508.
NQCIS, your reliable partner to your bright future in Canada.
After the journey, the hard work, comes the much anticipated day. The time has come. The search is on for the significant contributions of Filipino Canadians to the community and the country. The first Golden Balangay Awards. Launching date, March 11. Nomination period, March 12 to August 11, 2017. For more information, contact Ronnie Dilagana at 647-300-1970 or send your email at ronnie.dilagana@ikubumedia.com. Libo-libong kwento ng paglalakbay, isang gabing pagdiriwang ng tagumpay.